Morning. Morning. Good morning. Oh, I can hear an echo. You don't hear an echo? Oh, okay. I'm not used to this mic. This morning I'm going to talk about a portion of a song by Bob Dylan. And if you have a program in front of you, you can you can read while I'm talking. And I think Brizon is putting it in the chat room too. Oh, I've never used this mic before. I have a huge echo in my ears. Wow. No, I did use it once. But you guys don't hear that echo. Okay. Okay, so this is the refrain from Love Minus Zero, No Limit, and I'm going to read it, and then I'll talk about it. And let's see, usually there's a clock around somewhere. Okay. Good. Thank you. My love, she speaks like silence, without ideals or violence. She doesn't have to say she's faithful, yet she's true, like ice, like fire. People carry roses, make promises by the hours. My love, she laughs like the flowers. Valentines can't buy her. My love, she speaks softly. She knows there's no success like failure, and that failure is no success at all. Statues made of matchsticks crumble into one another. My love winks. She does not bother. She knows too much to argue or to judge. So, I'm a 60s person, so I met Bob Dylan in Record just about a year after I met my teacher, my Zen teacher, Suzuki Roshi. Bob Dylan did an interview 2 or 3 years ago in which he discussed his formative time as an artist, playing music in small venues and on the streets to tiny crowds, and how that shaped his artistic vision. And there are parallels between being a Zen student and an aspiring artist that I just want to suggest. Studying Zen can be a way to find our own artistic process. First, meeting a teacher that we resonate with. For Dylan, it was seeing Buddy Holly and feeling a strange connection with him, like he was related to him, or some slightly different form of the same thing. And Dylan says, he was the archetype, everything I wasn't and wanted to be. He was powerful and electrifying. He had a commanding presence. And every move he made, every gesture he made mesmerized Dylan. He says he looked me straight dead in the eye, and he transmitted something I didn't know. I didn't know what, that gave me the chills. Then he talks about hearing Leadbelly, and how Leadbelly also changed the trajectory of his entire life. Everything else, he says, seemed unimportant. He found the blues and folk songs to be more vibrant and true to life than pop songs of the day. And here's a quote from him. By listening to all the early folk artists and singing the songs yourself, you pick up the vernacular. You internalize it. You sing it in the ragtime blues, work songs, Georgia sea shanties, Appalachian ballads, and cowboy songs. You hear all the finer points and you learn the details. He says, I had all the vernacular down. when I started writing my own songs, the folk lingo was the only vocabulary that I knew, and I used it. So, well, it must be close to 60 years ago. Oh no, let's see. Yeah, 60 years ago. 60 years ago, I met my teacher, Shinryu Suzuki, in San Francisco, and he changed the trajectory of my whole life. Everything else seemed unimportant. And I remember I was in college, and I was, I'm embarrassed to say, in a fraternity, but I was. I don't know why I'm so embarrassed about that, but you know, we're getting embarrassed about odd things. And I remember my fraternity brother said to me, "You're obsessed with this Zen stuff and this Suzuki guy." And I was offended, but I was obsessed, as Dylan was obsessed with Lead Belly and the early folk artists. That's how we get this in us, through real aspiration and doing it over and over and over again. So how does being a Zen student relate? Well, I've just said, we learn the vernacular. He learned the vernacular of blues and folk. I learned the vernacular of my teachers. My first teacher, Suzuki Roshi, and then later my second teacher. And he says, Buddy Holly and Lead Belly both electrified, had an electrifying presence, a presence that transmitted something you didn't understand. And it was shocking and life-changing. And a lot of us felt that about Suzuki and Katagiri as well. They transmitted something we didn't understand. And it changed our whole lives, and not just externally, but internally. I'd gone to the best high schools and colleges. Well, yeah, 2 colleges, best high schools and colleges. But I dropped it all, whoosh, because I was in love with this practice and this teacher. And my friend who's died from cancer many years ago, Trudy Dixon, in the preface to Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, which she edited, she said, "The flow of a genuine spiritual teacher's consciousness is not the fixed, repetitive patterns of our usual self-centered consciousness, but rather arises spontaneously. In the end, it is not the extraordinariness of the teacher which perplexes, intrigues, and deepens the student. It is the teacher's utter ordinariness. Because he is just himself, he is a mirror for his students." When we learn to let our own nature free, Trudy ends, the boundaries between master and student disappear in a deep flow of being and joy in the unfolding of the Buddha mind. I was altered permanently. I dropped everything and devoted myself only to Zen for a big chunk of time. And I soaked it up over and over. I sat in the front row on every Sunday morning when Suzuki would speak. I don't know why, I just wanted to be close to him. I wanted to be close to him. And my wife, of now, that must be close to 60 years too, said, "Are you sure you want to get married?" But I did get married, and I had kids, and it's been wonderful. But she saw how obsessed I was. But I'm using this in a positive way, in an aspirational way. And we get the flavor of practice deep in our bones, just like Dylan got the flavor of these folk singers deep into his bones. We do that. This is not something I made up. We do it. And we become that person, cell by cell. And yet we become more and more ourselves at the same time. This seems to be. I think it's okay. Thank you. And in the early days at the Zen Center in San Francisco, we chanted the Heart Sutra every day. That was our song. That was our song that we chanted. And we didn't understand it, but it got inside us. It got inside us. It sunk in. As Dylan said, you internalize it. You know what it's all about. It is cellular. It gets in your cells. It gets in your cells. Like Dylan knows Buddy Holly and Lead Belly after listening to them over and over and over. So I sat with my teacher Suzuki and later my second teacher Katagiri for days and weeks, sitting, cleaning the Zen Center, in both Zen Centers, doing other tasks, running around. When we spend time with a mentor, or even mentors, they become our people, our ancestors, our ancestors. As in Suzuki's case, they may even become legends. When I knew him, nobody knew him. He was just a little guy in the Bay Area, 4'11", and a few of us would hang out with him. But he became a legend, not a huge legend, pretty big legend, though. I think of people like Babe Ruth or Johnny Appleseed or Joan of Arc. You go to San Francisco, his statue is big there. Bigger than he was. He was only 4'11", as I said. You can't go into the Zen Center there without bowing to him a whole bunch, because it's part of the protocol. That's interesting. So like Dylan was ever changed by diving into the essence of folk music, singing them over and over in smoky basement. I didn't have to go into smoky basements, but I did have to sit over and over, sing the Heart Sutra over and over, soak up its nutrients, become the flavor of the music. So now I'm going to move on to the, let's see, where is it? Now I'm going to move on to the first two, just talking about the first two. My love, she speaks like silence without ideals or violence. My love, she speaks like silence without ideals or violence. So this poem, if we want to call it a poem, I mean, he did win a Nobel Prize, so I think we can call it a poem. This poem is about love. It's about love. My love, she speaks like silence without ideals or violence. Love has so many different meanings. There's so many different songs about love. And yet it's a mystery. It's a mystery. And we have the potential to meet that mystery with the full realness of who we are, what is. To be open to it. To be open to it. Not to succumb to cynicism. Right now, people are feeling pretty cynical about things. And so that when we feel cynical, we withdraw. The more cynical we feel, the more we withdraw to protect ourselves. But this flawed self-protection mechanism dismisses everything sincere and true as simplistic or naive. Well, simple and sincere is what love really is. Simple and sincere. Simple and sincere. Thich Nhat Hanh says, understanding is love's other name. I like that. Understanding is love's other name. To love another means really to understand their suffering, to be there with it and understand it. It's what everybody needs, to feel understood. If one people really understands my suffering, how much better do I feel? How much better do I feel? When my heart's small and constrained, I can say I'm trying to be compassionate, but I'm so shriveled up that it's pretty limited. But if I can open my heart just a little bit and accept others and their shortcomings without demanding they change, then my heart opens. Then it expands. Yours too. It's a human phenomena. Human phenomena. And it's really what happens in deep spiritual practice. When our heart's open, these same things don't make us suffer anymore. These same shortcomings don't make us suffer. We just accept people. And then they have a chance to transform if they feel accepted by us, if they feel non-judgmentally accepted. They have the chance to transform. We're giving them a chance to transform. So then we grow our own hearts. And that begins with a commitment to understand and bear witness to our own suffering so that we can do that with others. Our own suffering, so we can do that with others. And we've just been sitting in retreat and everybody's been suffering some, and that's good. You need to suffer some to understand your own suffering, to kind of be with your own suffering, to be open to it. But we don't want to suffer too much, because then we don't begin, then we just want to close down. So we try to set our retreats up so there's just the right amount of suffering. We don't know what it is, but we really don't know, but. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, understanding is love's other name. And love is a learned interaction. Love is a learned interaction. We develop patterns of understanding and misunderstanding early in life by osmosis and imitation rather than conscious creation. What happened if our parents didn't love and understand each other? What happened if our parents were able to leave us money, houses, and land, but they weren't happy themselves? If we have happy parents, we've received the richest inheritance. And if we didn't have happy parents, we can find substitutes. We can find substitutes in a spiritual teacher, in a community. Unfortunately, my parents weren't very happy. But I had a Unitarian minister when I was starting about 10 or 11, who I saw every week in Sunday school. He was great. And then I met Suzuki when I was 20. Almost 21. So my love, she speaks like silence without ideals or violence. Ideals and violence paired together, paired together. The more we get caught in an ideal, the more potentially violent we become, because that ideal becomes everything. Our heart closes around that ideal. When I was in college years ago, everybody, I was a radical in college, but anyway, everybody carried around Mao Zedong's little red book, wonderful phrases, the communist vision. Everybody supports everyone else. The proletariat, the common people, live together. They commune, and the slogan was, "May 1,000 flowers bloom." Oh, may 1,000 flowers bloom. But what happened? The ideal, you had to do this, you had to be like this, or you weren't okay. The ideal closed the hearts of the leaders, and it closed everybody's heart, and they ended up doing just awful things to each other, awful things. And I was already with Suzuki, but I didn't think that Little Red Book was going to work, actually, although it had some beautiful phrases in it. They set the flame to the bonds of community because they failed to meet the communist vision. Be careful about that. Be careful about that. Whatever vision you have, we inflict pain on significant others when they fall short of our vision. We hurt them. We hurt them. They feel short of being who we thought they should be, or who we thought they were, or who they might be. We hurt them. Why do they feel short? Because our visions of love are based on ideas that we're stuck on, or habits we have. And so I, as a Buddhist idealist many years ago, I took on frugality and living close to the bone as an ideal. And my family didn't have any choice. I mean, my wife could have protested, but she kind of was into it too. But we didn't really need to. We didn't really need to. And I was got kind of caught by it, caught by the idea that I could be frugal, that I could live close to the bone, that I didn't need anything, and that my wife and kids didn't need anything. But it wasn't a love that was, as Dylan says, true like ice, like fire. True like ice, like fire. I was caught by an ideal and moral judgment about frugality. And my daughter said to me when she was about 40, I guess, and I was however old I was, 68 or something, she said to me, "Dad, you know, we didn't go out to restaurants very often back then, but once in a while we did, and you only said we could order 3 shrimp. And I said, well, they were 25 cents a piece, Aaron. She said, Dad. And then I apologized to her. How many years later is that? She's 40? She's 40, and this happened when she was about 10. Well, she finally confronted me, and I apologized. An ideal gets in the way of the wonderful, wonderful love, doesn't it? But we can just notice it and come back. We can just notice it and come back. That's what spiritual practice, what Zen practice is about. Just noticing when we get caught by any ideal, any idea. Come back to intimacy with ourselves and people we care about. And if we can be intimate with ourselves and people we care about, it spreads out. It spreads way, way, way out. My love winks. She does not bother. She knows too much to argue or to judge. My love winks. She does not bother. She knows too much to argue or to judge. Is it possible to fall into that deep feeling of love? Deep feeling of love where you have good humor? She winks. She has good humor. Well, I'm telling her she can only have 2 shrimp. She has good humor. But of course, she was only 10, so I'm not. But if I say I did that with my wife, no. She does not bother. She knows too much to argue or to judge. Within this deep love, Dylan says, she knows there's no success like failure, and failure is no success at all. So in the streets of San Francisco, I used to repeat this to myself, together with what Suzuki was telling me, because they really worked. They really worked well together. So love includes the willingness to take risks, to move beyond our comfort zone, beyond this confined world of routines and habits. Reaching beyond the little whining Tim. Don't kick him out. He needs to be taken care of. He needs to be safe, secure, and loved too. There's room for that. If I kick little Tim out, I'm going to kick you guys out too, even though I might fake it. So don't kick little Tim out. Don't kick little Ruzon out. Take care of him. Take care of him. She knows there's no success like failure, and failure is no success at all. Which means taking risks, reaching far beyond our little self. T.S. Eliot says, only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. We're all going to fail sometimes. And by failing and then trying again, we develop resiliency. Getting up, falling down, getting up and falling down. And as Dylan says in another record, without the pain and anguish associated with work going over and over our missed chances and dreams. Over and over, I missed it. If only I'd done this, if only she'd done that, if only. But that's not necessary. Dylan has another song called Don't Look Back. Don't look back. Now, of course, when Erin said that to me, I apologized to her. That's in a form of looking back, but then I let it go and she let it go. And I mentioned it again to her, that's my daughter, a few days later, and she said, Dad, we dropped it. Oh, thank you, Erin. We dropped it. Don't look back. Don't look back. You spend your whole time looking back and projecting into the future, you miss this wonderful love of life for itself. And the love of life for itself. The love of the cosmos for itself as you're the cosmos. You just little you. So, we always have another chance. Oh, my teacher, Suzuki Roshi, you can read about this in Cucumber, probably. That's the big book of his biography. He'd wanted to come to an English-speaking country for years because he had a tutor in Japan named Miss Ransom who tutored him in English, and she was interested in Buddhism. And so he thought, wow, those people and she interested in learning about meditation. The Japanese didn't meditate, but she was interested in meditation. And he liked her. So he wanted to come to this country, but he didn't know the difference between the US and the UK, and he certainly didn't know the difference between the UK and Haight-Ashbury in 1965. So when he got here, he had a very rude awakening. And he did say that. He said something like this to me, I'm just paraphrasing. He said, when I saw I had not come to Miss Ransom's country, I was afraid I would fail. Because Miss Ransom was very proper British. She had tea at 3, she had a doily, she had everything set up precisely, she had everything in its place, and he thought he was coming to a country like that. Instead, he came to San Francisco just during the beatnik time, just before the counterculture. And of course, he could have gone to another part of San Francisco, but we were the only ones who were interested in meditation, so. So he adjusted. He met us, we met him. He came this far, we came that far. This is what intimacy is about. This is what love is about. We meet each other where they are. But we don't negate our own needs. We just find find a meeting place. We can always find a meeting place if we want intimacy, if we want love. We can always find a meeting place. Well, there are some exceptions. Both people have to be, the exceptions are if the other person doesn't do that, it's very hard to do that. But if both people are really, really wanting to open their hearts to each other, there's a wonderful opportunity, wonderful opportunity. So right in the midst of all the things that are happening right now that threaten democracy and climate, yikes, yikes, yikes. Can we create a culture of intimacy, love, and understanding? Can we do that? One person at a time, one interaction at a time, so that we can heal ourselves and heal others? Not an ideal which narrows us, but an aspiration that opens us so wide, wider than we could ever imagine. As Dylan suggests in the title of the poem, limitless love. Love minus zero, no limit. Love minus zero, no limit. You think he's been hanging out with a Zen guy, wouldn't you? What's he been doing? I never could figure it out. I never could figure out why this, 25-year-old kid from Hibbing, where he got all this wisdom. He didn't do a meditation. He was kind of cranky. But he had it. He still has it. But you have it too. And it's a question of living it. Not of thinking about it, but living it. That's why we say practice enlightenment. It's not practicing in order to have an experience, but practice enlightenment as one. Enlightening whatever it is, whatever the difficulty is, so we can be intimate with it. Love minus zero, no limit. My love, she speaks softly. She's true, like ice, like fire. So I think that's what I want to say this morning. I'll be happy to entertain any questions or comments that people have. And there will be no social time because we'll be going back to our meditation. But there's time right now for questions or comments from anybody online or in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. Really great talk, thank you. And I just wanted to, so I was brought to the Zen Center because Ben Connolly, the assistant guidance teacher here, was my guitar teacher for a long time. And your talk made me think about the parallels between playing music and practicing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're playing music, you often get into this flow state where you're just focused on the music. You're not thinking about what's your problems in your life or what's going on. You're just focused on the moment and the music. And I feel like that's very, that's what we're doing with meditation.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, first of all. If you haven't seen the Dylan movie, do it. But also I can highly recommend the movie Amazing Grace. I happen to have caught that for a matinee and the place was empty. Honestly, it took me 15-20 minutes to walk out of it.
Remind us, is that one of the documentaries about him?
No, it was a full-length feature movie, so it wasn't a documentary per se. No, Amazing Grace as in the song, not about Bob.
Yeah, oh, I see.
But and don't rent it, buy it. It's all true. It's about how the song Amazing Grace ended up affecting and bringing slavery to an end.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
So,
wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Other people. Yeah.
I've never seen him live.
No, but I'm going to. He's coming to Mankato. Yeah, I'm going to. Now, of course, yeah, I'm going to. As you know, he never had much of a voice, and he has lost the little bit of voice he had, but all the better. You know, you deal, well, meaning you deal with what is. You just, and, you know. Yeah. And I saw I saw, how many of you saw the Dylan movie that just came out recently? Oh, more than half of you. Yeah, I saw the movie with my kids, my 50-year-old kids, right? And they loved it. And I liked it, but it wasn't Bob Dylan. It was this guy Chalamet. And it wasn't Joan Baez, whom I went to high school with and who I heard sing all the time. It was this other beautiful woman. So I liked it, but not the way my kids did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
People online, usually someone online has something to say. There are 53 people? Oh, yes, does one of the 53 people want to ask something or say something? Back to in the room.
Tim?
Yeah.
How do you balance radical acceptance with self-preservation?
Well, they go together, I think, very well. It's a very good question, but radical acceptance means radically accepting your need for safety. I mean, that's part of radical acceptance. Radically accepting your need for security, your need for safety, your need for protection. And that's without that, radical acceptance is just another ideal, just another idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Just on that, I guess I understand radical acceptance is not so much being a victim in that this is the way things is, you can do nothing about it, but more like I can see clearly and I can accept it, and now it's time to roll up my sleeves and work.
Good, good. Yes, yes. Now it's time for me to roll up my sleeves and work, but not work too hard. Because then I lose my balance and my heart begins to close. So work hard but easy. Hard but easy. Both hard and easy. Meaning aspiration. I mean, both Dylan and I kind of worked hard, but it was also easy. I mean, him listening to all these people, me listening to Suzuki over and over again. That was hard, but it was also easy because that was a part of our aspiration. So it was, and it felt good at the time. Although sometimes I was puzzled by what this old Japanese guy meant, but that's part of it. That's part of it. If we're really going to meet someone in intimacy, sometimes we'll be puzzled by them. Sometimes we'll be frustrated with them. He wouldn't explain the Heart Sutra to me for 2 years. He kept reciting it every day, and it's, if you don't know Buddhism, it's sort of a mumbo jumbo. And he wouldn't explain it to me. Oh, it was frustrating. But it's part of intimacy, it's getting frustrated.
Tim, there's a question.
Okay. Yeah.
I was reviewing things online today, and I mean, it was quite moving. The audience that years ago, and I mean, top comedians from around the world. And he had a room full of people. And, you know, the Polish Pope helped save the world, but this present Pope, he had an audience of comedians. And you know, and part of his quote-unquote lecture was how important humor is.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, he's got a hell of a burden now.
Uh-huh.
But you know, and I reviewed some of the comments that the comedians had. You know, I mean, they were dumbfounded.
Uh-huh.
You know, and how are you doing, Pope? And you know, this, that, and the other. And it's quite. I highly recommend reviewing it. I mean,
Oh,
it's
okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we might end a little early if nobody has any. Oh, yeah, sure.
A silly question probably, but if you were to select one book about Zen or Dharma, what would it be?
No. I always get that question. I can't answer that question. I don't really know. I'm a little bit prejudiced toward my first teacher's books, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and it's not always so, especially his second book. He's got a third book too. Other than that, you have to follow your heart. You have to find a book that when you open it, when you read a paragraph, resonates with you. And I mentor a lot of people at Zen Center, and they choose their own books, and we find what resonates with them. Yes.
Okay, I have a question based on this Bob Dylan song that you chose.
Okay.
So where it says she knows there's no success like failure.
Yeah.
And that failure is no success at all.
Yeah.
And that sounds very Zen-like you were talking about, but I'm just wondering, like, what is your interpretation of that? Because that's...
Well, I'll kind of review what I said before. If we really care about something and really want to be intimate with it and move toward it and aspire toward becoming it, we're going to fail sometimes. And we just will. If it's just smooth going and we just get it, we don't really get it in us. We get it in our head, but it doesn't really get in our psyches and our bodies. So failure is really important. But failure in itself is not successful. We need to get up and do it again. We need to get up and do it again.
So kind of the journey.
And do it again and do it again until we realize that our life becomes trying things, moving beyond our comfort zone, embracing something beyond our comfort zone, and maybe falling down. But if we fall down, getting up and at least experiencing the world freshly. Because if we don't try to really inhabit or manifest the things we aspire to, what kind of life is that? And if we try, we're going to fall down. But the falling down doesn't have to dampen our aspiration at all. Oh, I fell down.
Did you write a whole book about that, Tim?
I did. I did. Yeah. What?
What was the title of that one again?
Well, I don't know which of my 3 books though. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know which book. I have a book.
Enlightenment is an accident.
Huh? Oh, enlightenment is an accident. Yes, enlightenment is an accident. Yeah. Yes. You're right. Thank you. Thank you. And the title of the book is Enlightenment is an Accident, Practices to Make Us Accident Prone. Practices to make us accident prone. Yeah.
To the person about the book, I had a book choose me.
Hmm.
Back in the 70s, I said, what a goofy book about a seagull and all this nonsense. And I bought it at my college library and I drove it home in my Dodge Challenger. And I opened up the cover and I read the entire book in my father's garage in my car.
Uh-huh.
That book chose me.
Huh.
And He's a gifted author. He just went through a major calamity, his plane crash. And I won't spoil it or dominate here, but Jonathan Siegel, first of all, Richard Bach, but buy the most recent book because they didn't publish all 4 parts. Initially, they only published 3 parts, but now a 4th part has been found. That book rocks. He's got a huge following online. He wrote Illusions. And again, thank you for.
You're
it's
welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So I'll turn it over to Raymond now.